I started to think about when people may have experienced shame or judgment, self-criticism about experiencing certain emotions.
Mhm.
And for many, it starts with childhood, but this is the other side of childhood. Some of the most freest people I have met in terms of how they engage with God are children. But
Mhm.
we as adults sometimes spoil children's experience with God because we impose what we've experienced onto them.
Mhm.
And if children are not, if you like, shamed out of experiencing God that makes sense to them, they can show us so much about
Mhm.
what it means to experience what I call emotional freedom with God. So, some of us have experiences with parents or elders in our community where you have to behave yourself, where you can't talk back. And the God of creation has no problem with us sharing our concerns, our anger, our frustrations, not only about life, but with God, about God.
Mhm.
God can
Mhm.
handle those
Yes.
emotions. He's really quite happy and to embrace those emotions and be with us. So when I Fly with Papa honors the emotional freedom that I believe God intended us to experience. This is not just hypothetical. This is an
Mhm.
experience with God. And one of my favorite passages in scripture is from Job chapter 13, verse 3. And basically, Job says, I am going to bring my concerns. I would speak to the Almighty, and I desire to argue my case with God, not aside from God, but with God. And I was so inspired by that verse when I took an Old
Mhm.
Testament class that I decided to have my protagonist, her name is Winnie.
Mhm.
She's 7 years old, and Winnie is our teacher in many ways. I often say to my students, from whom can we learn? And I think Jesus was very good at teaching us from
Mhm.
whom can we learn. Even when the disciples were a little bit upset when he would talk to a child or touch a child or talk to a woman or talk to somebody who was despised, Jesus didn't allow that criticism to stop him from engaging. So,
Mhm.
so you have a scene in When I Fly with Papa where Winnie is mad with God, with the God she calls Papa. She crosses her arms, she stamps her feet. This is a fully embodied, I'm
Mhm.
angry with God. I'm going to share my anger with God. And, I have a dear friend, she's Irish, and she taught me some ways I'm also inspired by those, again, from whom can we learn? I'm inspired by those who teach me parenting skills that I think, oh, I like that. And so she taught me when her daughter was very young at the time, and my friend grew up in a way that she wanted to learn how to experience certain emotions. And so it was very important to her for her daughter to name the emotions she was feeling.
Mhm.
And one day, her daughter was crying and she was very cute, I have to say. And she said, I'm very, very angry. And that she could name her
Mhm.
emotions, that she could identify the name was so powerful to me. And it made me think about this is what we can do with God. God allows us to name our emotions, but frankly, he gives us room to experience and express emotions that we don't always have a name for, that we don't always understand. And yet he can still be present with us, comfort us, understand whatever we're experiencing.